Hello students, and welcome to part 2 of our lesson on point slope form. Let's do one more example when we know a point and a slope, and then we'll move on to how we can use it when we know 2 points. So here in this information about a relationship, we know a point and a slope. So we can use point slope form to write an equation. Remember, point slope form says y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Slope is the m in our relationship. The ordered pair contains both the x1 and the y1. And now we know the 3 values that we need to substitute. Remaining will be our x value and our y value, so that we can still calculate any other relationship. So we have y minus, because that's part of the form, y1, which is negative 9. And when we see minus and negative, we know we can rewrite that as a plus sign, equals m, which is negative 2/3, times x minus x1, which is 3. So we have to distribute. Negative 2/3 times x makes negative 2/3 x. Negative 2/3 times negative 3, well, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 2/3 times 3, which is 3 over 1, is 6/3, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, so we have plus 2. So write down our left side, we have y plus 9 equals negative 2/3 x plus 2. To isolate y, we take 9 away from each side. We'd have y equals negative 2/3 x minus 7. This is our equation representing this relationship. Now, note, even though it's in slope-intercept form, we actually used point-slope form here in order to get to slope-intercept form. Now, even though for point-slope form, we need to know a point and a slope, if we know 2 points in the relationship, we can still use point-slope form. Here's why. Do we have a point? Yes, in fact, we have 2. Do we know the slope? No, not right now, but we could calculate it. How can you calculate slope when 2 points are known? We'll think slope formula. Slope formula says that the slope is equal to y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Now substitute our values, x1, y1, x2, y2. So we have y1, which is negative 4, minus y2, which is minus 2, over x1, which is 1, minus x2. So we have 1 from x1 minus x2, which is 3. So we have negative 4 minus 2. Negative 4 and negative 2 make negative 6 over 1 minus 3, which is negative 2. Negative divided negative is a positive, and 6 divided 2 is 3. So our slope is 3. So our first step whenever we know 2 points is to figure out the slope. Now, do we know a point? Yes, in fact we know 2, so we can choose from either one of them. And do we know the slope? Yes. So we know point and we know a slope, so we'll use point slope form to write our equation. We know that our slope is 3, because that's what we just calculated from these 2 points. And we can choose any point that we want. Now, in my opinion, I would choose this point to use because they're both positive and I don't have to worry about that negative sign. So we're going to use the point 3, 2. Now that we know a point and the slope, we can use point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. M is 3, so we'll substitute 3 for m. X1 is 3. Remember, x1 always comes first. Y minus and y1 is 2. Now we can distribute. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 3 makes negative 9. So we have y minus 2 equals 3x minus 9. Add 2 to each side to isolate the y. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So we have y plus 0 is y equals 3x because there's no terms like that. And we have negative 9 plus 2, which is negative 7. So our equation that would go through these 2 points is y equals 3x minus 7. Let's look at another example like that. So we have our 2 points, 2, negative 7, and 2, 5. Since we know 2 points and not the slope, we'll have to calculate the slope. So remember, use our slope formula. Slope equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So label our points x1, y1, and x2, y2. y1 is negative 7, so we have negative 7 minus y2, which is 5, over x1, which is 2, minus y2, which is 2. So we have negative 7 and negative 5, which make negative 12, over 2 minus 2, which is 0. So we have negative 12 divide 0. Can you divide a number by 0? No. So this slope is undefined. If you use 2 points and find that the slope is undefined, you cannot use point-slope form. Instead, just visualize it. You know that an undefined slope is going to be a vertical line, which is a variation of the parent graph y equals 1. But here we have 2, negative 7, which would be way down here, and 2, 5, which would be up here, making a vertical line. Now, look at this vertical line. It's going through 2. Okay. Look at this vertical line. It's a very ugly vertical line. But look at this vertical line. Is this x equals 1? No, because it's over 1 more, so this is actually x equals 2. So if ever you start trying to use point slope form and you get an undefined slope, just visualize it on a graph because it's going to be a variation of x equals 1. It's just going to be to the left or to the right at a different x value. Alright, let's look at a problem-solving application. It says, the cost to place an ad in the newspaper for 1 week is a linear function of the number of lines in the ads. So in other words, the cost depends on the number of lines. The costs for 3, 5, and 10 lines are shown. Write an equation in slope-intercept form that represents the function. Then find the cost of an ad that is 18 lines long. So, let's look at our graph and think about what we have, or what we know. We know 3 ordered pairs in the graph. We only need to know 2, and then we could figure out the slope and use point-slope form. So let's pick 2 points to use. It really doesn't matter. We'll pick the first 2, because when we subtract them, we'll get rid of our decimal. Okay, so we have 5, 18.5, and 3, 13.5. Now, we know 2 points, we can figure out the slope using the slope formula, which is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. So label our points x1, y1, x2, y2. So y1 is 18.5 minus y2, which is 13.5, over x1, which is 5, minus x2, which is 3. 18.5 minus 13.5 is 5, and 5 minus 3 is 2. So we have 5 over 2 as our slope. Now, you could simplify that to 2.5 if you want, because we are talking about a cost. We're talking about money. So it makes sense to simplify it to a decimal because money is a decimal. Now, what does this slope mean in context of the problem? each line, because remember this is a slope over 1, each line costs $2.50. So if we wanted to write an equation, we could use point slope form. We now know that the slope is 250. Now, we do not have to use one of these 2 points. We can use any point that we want. So my suggestion would be to use this one to avoid decimals. So we're going to use the point 1031. So we can use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Since we know a point and a slope, we're going to use point slope form. So we have y minus y1, which is 31, equals 250 times x minus x1, which is 10. So do the distributive property to simplify. 250 times x is 250x. 250 times 10 is 25. A positive times a negative is a negative, so minus 25. So we have y minus 31 equals 250x minus 25. Add 31 to each side. We get y equals 250x plus 6. Now, we're not quite finished. We have our equation, which was the first part of what they were asking us to do. It says write an equation, but then it says find the cost of an ad that's 18 lines long. Well, if you think about what value is the cost of the ad, that's the y value, and we don't know what that is, so that's going to be the unknown. But when it talks about how many lines long it is, that's our x value. So now we know that x is 18. Let's use our equation, which is y equals 250x plus 6, to figure out what y would be. So we have y equals 250 times 18 plus 6. If we use our calculator, 250 times 18 is 45. So we'd have y equals 45 plus 6, or y equals 51. The cost of 18 lines would be $51. Now let's look at how we can use point slope form to create a graph. So this is somewhat review, but it will put it all together for us. So as you can see, we've already substituted our point and our slope into our equation, and now we're here at point slope form. We can change it to slope intercept form by distributing. Negative 4 times x would be negative 4x, and negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. So we get y minus 5 equals negative 4x plus 4. If we add 5 to each side, we will now be in slope intercept form with y equals negative 4x plus 9. Now recall, here is how you graph. First, you got to plot the y-intercept, which is the point 0, 9 in this case, because we get it here from the b. So we'll go up 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we'll move the slope, which in this case is negative 4, or negative 4 over 1, which means go down 4 over 1. So we're going to start at our y-intercept, which is here at 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which you already have drawn. And we're going to go down 4 over 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4 down over 1. 4 down, 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. 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 That's the furthest we can go. Now we go back up to our y-intercept and do the opposite. Up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, but to the left 1, so that it's still in alignment. And then we can draw, connecting the lines as best we can, to show this linear function.